men and women are different. Okay, I think we can establish that so clearly. So the idea that men and women are the same and that women can perform men's roles
Right.
is absolutely ridiculous.
Right. What's going on, everybody? I am excited, super excited to be talking to this next guest because he sounds incredibly sophisticated, and for some reason you're gonna figure out why in a second. But been watching his stuff all day today, and it's made me laugh, it's made me cry, it's made me sad, it's made me happy. So I'm excited to have this next guest on. Without further ado, he's the host of A Pint of Interest on YouTube. Make sure you check it out. His name is Lewis Brackpool. Thanks so much for being here, Lewis.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. And I'm guessing you're saying that because of the whole accent thing.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, you know how much of a suckers Americans are for a British accent. Yeah,
I've heard this before. This myth. I'm yet to come across that soon. So
all you got to do is come to America and go to the South, and you'll be fawned over.
Oh gosh. Okay.
But yeah, man. So just tell us a little bit about your podcast or your show. I love the format of it. Like, I love interviewing people that have a unique approach to content, because to me that's the most fun part about doing this stuff, right? Is getting to experiment with formats and all that. So just give us a little bit of like what your show's about, what you do, and all that.
Yeah. So I am a host for a podcast called A Pint of Interest. It is a very British-styled podcast where we set it in a kind of like a virtual pub. So, you know, most of the time we're having a drink and we're just loosely talking about politics.
Nice.
And we bring on guests every week and just talk to them about certain issues, what's been going on in the news. And we do segments called Woke of the Week, where we find the most woke article and pretty much to take the mick out of it. And it's very black-pilled. It's very sort of, you know, taking the mick out of our own culture, but at the same time trying to find issues and trying to find solutions at the same time.
Right.
So, yeah, it's one of those strange concepts, but yeah, it's great fun. I obviously have my, I call him my token Spanish mate on my show, Oscar Lopez, who's a fantastic co-host as well. And we're pretty right wing on a lot of things. We're quite centre on a few stuff. Sometimes we end up arguing, which I think is great for viewership as well. But it's all genuine. It's all very organic. So that's what I do, along with obviously my YouTube stuff, where I'm either reacting to something or I'm talking about a particular topic. So
for sure,
yeah, it's all good fun.
So when I do come on, I'm probably not going to be having beer, but I will have an old fashioned, because that's my go-to drink.
Great.
And I'm going to make it myself. I'm going to try and make myself for the first time just for your show. So definitely go and follow him on YouTube. It's super cool, and I think it's super entertaining and at times very funny. So sometimes sadness can be funny. Like,
yeah, you have to. Honestly, the politics game, I didn't realize how sad it is until I properly started to get into it. And I thought the best way to do it is to have a laugh at the same time. And I think that's kind of like my little motto. Yeah, I like to sort of pull.
For sure. So along your personal politics, right? I'm always curious about this. You being from the UK and all. What are there differences between, let's say, the right wing of the UK and then conservatism in America? I know that I'm Peruvian, right? So I'm listening to a lot of Peruvian politics lately because I'm just intrigued by what's happening. A lot of things are changing, and I've noticed that the right side of politics there is not comparable to right wing conservatism in America. So I'm curious for you, what differences do you see between, you know, let's say the people in the States and then yourself?
So I think the big difference is the conservatives in the UK, for a lot of people, feel like they're not exactly conserving much. And I think that's the big issue we're having over in the UK in terms of right and left. Obviously, we've got our fringe groups and, you know, tiny little political parties that try and make their voices heard in every election and try and swing the voters on particular topics. But I think the main thing with British politics at the minute is the fact that the Conservatives aren't really conserving much.
What do you mean by that necessarily? Like, what would they be wanting to conserve otherwise?
Well, there's a lot of damage that have been done over the years by previous candidates. So, for example, Tony Blair, when he came in during the, I believe, late 90s and early 2000s, he was passing so much legislation throughout his term. So from that has left a massive detrimental vacuum within politics in the UK. So things like freedom of speech as well has been completely ruined in the UK. I think I briefly talked to you actually about non-hate crime incidents or something like that.
Yes.
Briefly went over that. So there's things like that, and this was all drafted up by Tony Blair back in the day, and it's completely overhauled and it's being weaponized now. And because we have a majority Conservative government, they're not exactly using their powers willfully. I mean, of course, with COVID and things like that, and the lockdowns and the restrictions, excuse me, it's kind of been used as a very, I want to say, quite draconian measures, and people don't like that.
Right.
I think we see places like Texas and Florida, a lot of us in the UK, and see those as kind of like safe havens now, where you're not part of this controlled system.
Right.
And I think that's the problem. And personally, I'm not sure about other people, but personally, I see our Conservative government as almost liberals.
Okay.
So like neoliberals.
Right,
so
right.
That's the big difference. So it's very watered down conservatism.
Right.
And I think that's the main thing.
There's not a big degree of nationalism that's happening within the party.
No. So in the UK, nationalism is considered a dirty word, which is really bad.
Oh,
and
see.
Patriotism is very, not frowned upon, but it's almost laughed at.
Right.
And I don't like that. Because that's why I respect America a lot, because you fly your flags very proudly. You're proud of your military. You're proud of your history. Whereas over here, it's been watered down and weaponized so much that you feel like you can't go out and be patriotic. You can't go out and say you're a nationalist because people would think that you're, well, racist, really, to put it bluntly.
Right.
So that's the clear problems in the UK, unfortunately.
The only time that I've really investigated UK politics at all was I stumbled across some videos of this guy, Tommy Robinson. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay, he's a really, really controversial figure. As far as I know, he got put in jail for things that he said, in particular about Islam and stuff like that. But is he considered like a far right nationalist? There is that what the gist is?
See, this is what the media have said, and a lot of publications. Tommy Robinson. I've never spoken about Tommy Robinson on anything, actually. Funnily enough, you're the first one to bring this topic into light.
Well, he's the one that introduced me to the idea of Antifa, even, and
Wow.
here
Okay.
Antifa has grown into so many things. Tommy Robinson's content was out 10 years ago, so Antifa was literally, like Joe Biden said, it was an idea back then, and I think it's grown, and so now it's here, and it's in our neighborhoods in the States, and I'm just like, wow, I remember looking at this like years ago on YouTube.
The problem is with this rhetoric of anti-fascism, right, is anyone now on the right is considered a fascist. I mean, this has been polarized so much that even being small c conservatives, a small c conservative, that is considered, a form of fascism now. And that's what's the worrying thing. I mean, Tommy Robinson, as far as I'm aware, he always voted Labour, so he always voted left-wing politics from back in the day before he started the English Defence League. Years and years ago. I remember I was very young when he started that. And personally, in my own personal view of the English Defence League, I'm not a fan of how he's done it because it's not really taken seriously nowadays. I mean, the EDL doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Because it consisted of, it didn't look professional. It was pretty much, it looked as like a bunch of football hooligans going around smashing things up, and
I
it
like
wasn't
to
really.
think of it. I like to think of it like comparable to Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys.
Oh yeah, and the Proud Boys. Yeah, yeah.
I feel like it's a similar aesthetic. You know, maybe the optics wise.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, definitely. But I think when Tommy started getting more serious, I say more serious. I think more sort of. I want to say mainstream, but that's not the correct word because he's been banned.
Right.
But I think more nuanced and very more streamlined in what his message was. And you know, if you go and watch his Oxford University speech, where he speaks for an hour long about you know, the issues with Islam that he believes as well, and the troubles he's had growing up in Luton and areas which multiculturalism unfortunately has failed within these areas within Britain. It sort of highlights the growing worry of it. And in my own personal opinion, I've never really admitted this, but I personally don't mind Mr. Robinson. I don't agree with him on everything. I don't think anyone can agree with anyone on everything. But I think when you look into it, I think what the media has done, very similar with Trump, very similar with Nigel Farage, is operated on a kind of smear campaign.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to say this now. I don't think Mr. Robinson is a racist at all.
I agree.
I've not seen any evidence of that at all, and that's my own personal viewpoint from seeing that. Yeah, I wasn't expecting talking about him. Actually.
Me neither.
Very surprising.
I just you know, the accent triggers something, and it brought it to light. But it's interesting to me to talk about things like that, and in particular, if we want to touch on religion a little bit, we don't have to go deep, but
sure.
What his critiques of Islam are, I think some people may, if they are agnostic or they're not religious, they might think, well, what is it about Islam that doesn't apply to just religions in general? And for me, you know, I've studied Christian theology for a while, and I've touched on Islam and Islamic theology, but the main difference is that incorporated into Islam is a government, right? It's a way of running an entire country, whereas Christianity is based on the individual. And so as much as I would love to, as a Christian, say everybody in the United States has to be a Christian, that would be an ideologue kind of thing to do. That would be very authoritarian, and it would contradict the worldview itself, whereas Islam, it kind of fits into the worldview. Have you discovered anything that you're critical of when it comes to religion or Islam in particular? Is there something that have you thought about that much?
Yes. Islam's a very tricky subject here in the UK.
I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a very, very tricky subject. I personally I'm not a fan of it myself. I actually don't tie to any religion personally, and that might surprise a lot of people, being conservative.
Right.
But yeah, in particular, I think when you have a doctrine that has within the scripture that treats women and children as second-class citizens,
right,
and you know, the idea of you can beat your wife black and blue without drawing blood, that doesn't sit well with me personally.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of that.
How dare you?
Yeah, how dare I be critical? But this is the problem. I'm not a fan of it. Do I think that people should stop practicing the religion? No. Do I think that it needs a reform? Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that's my only critique, because there is a lot. I do have a copy of the Quran, and I do need to go through it thoroughly. But I think it does need a reform from what I've seen and from what I've read so far.
Cool.
Because it's
definitely, I can imagine it would be a tricky subject to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'd love to continue the conversation. We're going to switch gears, but maybe we could continue it for like the kind of web extended thing I do for my Patreon members. This way it's behind a paywall. We'll talk about it in depth, you know, it'd be cool.
Sure.
So yeah, switching gears, what we were going to talk about before we got into Tommy Robinson and everything, the culture wars, right? What is happening day to day, and this the gender, I guess the gender confusion that's happening today. It seems to be like a lot of the things you're reacting to in your content are things that have to do with, like, let's say feminism, or I one particular is hilarious where it's this very pretty blonde girl and she's taking all these pictures, and it's like pre college and then like post college, or you guys call it uni. And she's just like this emo, she's just she looks completely different. Where do you think all of this is coming from is my question. What's the deal with feminism, and why is it having such a drastic effect in particular on these younger girls?
I think feminism over the years has been an absolute disaster for women. An absolute disaster. I mean, I'm all for equal rights. I'm all for equal opportunity, not equity, because there's a clear difference.
Yes.
I think feminism now has been used as a model to almost hate men now, because it's like, okay, we've gotten what we want, but we want now the power over other genders. And that's where I kind of go, I switch off and I go, no thanks. In regards to this girl that, of course, has completely changed from, looking very presentable and then all of a sudden gone completely the other way. I don't know. Maybe it's too much TikTok. Maybe it's too much Tumblr, although I don't know if Tumblr even exists anymore.
I don't think so. I think
no.
I think Facebook
I think they've all transcended onto mainstream platforms now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. I think it's this sort of big FU to men, and this idea of a patriarchy, that men are tyrannical and want to control women and control their bodies and control what they think.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that doesn't even happen anymore.
Yeah,
I don't think it's even happened since the Middle Ages.
Right.
So I don't know. Why be so angry and upset over the most beautiful Western civilization in the world? Britain, Canada, the US, all of these countries, Northern Europe, that literally treat women exactly the same as men.
Right.
So I don't understand where this hatred is coming from.
Right. It's interesting because this is happening, and a comedian, Andrew Schultz, I don't know if you've heard of him, he made this point, and I think it's hilarious. The feminist movement has pushed this equity, essentially, but in a very convenient time where we don't have nearly as much manual labor to do. We have air conditioning. We have, every luxury at our disposal. And now is the time where the feminist movement says, hey, we want to be equal. We want everything that men can do. And we can do everything that men can do. And we are men, so.
Yeah. Which is wrong, I think.
Yeah.
I think the idea... Men and women are different, okay? I think we can establish that so clearly. So the idea that men and women are the same and that women can perform men's roles is absolutely ridiculous, in my view. I mean,
so let's unpack that a little bit. Well, what would you consider a woman's role as opposed to a man's role?
Well, if you look at caring, I mean, women are biologically and obviously mentally way more equipped to care for even emotionally, to care for children, animals, things like that. Not saying that men can't, but of course they're more biologically equipped, right? And in terms of for a man, it's completely different. So they're more sort of protection, and that sort of thing. I believe I've read a lot of Jordan Peterson, and I think he stated that women are more sort of emotionally, intensive. I want to say the word. Whereas a man is more sort of aggressive, protectionism, that kind of area.
Absolutely.
So we do have different roles, and I mean, to mix that and jumble that up, I think is creating a a cocktail of disaster.
Yeah, it's incredible. One of the things that frustrates me in particular is the disdain for the institution of marriage, right? Because it's like
Sure.
what you have complementary roles, you know, I mean Christianity called complementarianism.
Hmm.
And we have literally built societies on this for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, well, because I saw my parents having, you know, trouble with their marriage or they got divorced, now I lose
Mm.
all hope in the institution of marriage. And actually, I should behave like a man. A woman should behave like a man and start
Mm.
having, you know, being promiscuous because that's
Yeah.
empowering. It's almost like they're shooting themselves in the foot. Essentially,
Yeah.
they're removing the aspect of society that was supposed to benefit them, right? That was supposed to be mutually beneficial for men and women. So
Yeah.
that's the part that gets to me. What do you see as, I guess, the reasoning to keep marriage as an important institution? Like what you mentioned, Jordan Peterson,
Hmm.
and one of his, I guess, observations was so genius to me, that we're in a time now where we have to explain things that we just knew were true for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, hey,
Hmm.
you should get married and have kids.
Yeah.
Now we find ourselves explaining those things.
Explaining these things all over again. I mean, statistics show that women are the unhappiest they've ever been in modern times. And you could factor that into so many things, whether it be feminism, whether it be staying late at work, whether it be pursuing a career instead of a family. There's so many different avenues to go in by. But the problem is, when you have all these avenues, it does create this cocktail, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of this unhappiness.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying, you're a woman, don't go to work. You're a woman, don't pursue a career.
Right.
Nobody's saying this. And I think that's the tanglement of message
That's the
being
trope,
pushed
I
across.
think, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're not saying that. We're just saying, look, you'd be happier if you got married and had kids.
Yeah.
And there's nothing controversial about that.
Yeah, a little
You know?
anecdote on that note. My first job as a graphic designer, full time, I was, you know, finally in the industry I wanted to be in. I worked alongside this girl who was older than me. I was 23 at the time. She was in her 30s. And
Yeah.
she would just unload on me. She would tell me all of her, you know, we were working next door cubicles, so obviously you get to know the person. She'd tell me all about her boyfriend from England that would come and see her and blah blah blah. And she wants to marry him. There was one night where we had to stay late for work. Her work wasn't getting done. The boss was on her butt. On top of that, her boyfriend had just broken up with her because she found out that he cheated on her. So he was like, you know what, then it's over, right? All this stuff is culminating for her. And as I'm leaving, I go to say bye to her, and she's under her desk crying, sobbing. And I'm just like, at the time, I was just like, I felt bad because I'm like, okay, she's having relationship problems. But looking back on it, it's like, no, this woman has put herself in the situation where she put her career first for so long that now it's hard for her to really dedicate herself to a relationship, and that's causing issues as well. I'm sure the guy has fault in it too, but it was just like this big culmination of like everything that's wrong with that feminist mentality. A little anecdote, but I think it's really representative of a bigger issue.
Absolutely. And it sounds like she burnt herself out.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all guilty of burning ourselves out. But when you prioritize things that extended bodies tell you to, for example, feminism, teaching you can do man things, you can take on man roles, you can be better than and stronger than a man, you can do all these things that men can do as well. Fine, no problem. But it's one of those things. If I suddenly decided, right, I'm going to go to university, and I had an IQ of, let's say, 100, but everyone else in university was, say, 140, I'm going to struggle.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to keep up with everyone else, and that's the sad reality of it.
Right.
Now, once again, you have to explain. Not all, of course, because it's very. It's very individualistic in that sense, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't just say all. You can't use the tarnish brush all. And I think both sides can be guilty of that. But at the same time, you look at generalization, you look at the wider factor, and that needs to be taken into account as well.
Absolutely. To bring up another controversial figure,
Sure.
when you said not all women necessarily need to live this way, it brings up what Milo once talked about,
Oh yes,
the infamous
Unipolis.
Milo.
Yep.
He said, like, if you're a woman, you're most likely going to be most happy if you're married. Now there's a very small percentage of women that are so incredibly good at what they do that the world would benefit from them not being married or not dedicating their life to their family. People like, people like Oprah, people like Mother Teresa, people who have a lot to give the world as far as talent goes and natural gifting. I think that applies for women, but I think it maybe not as much, but I think it does apply for men. I want to kind of go into the topic of masculinity and where men kind of line up in all this, but from my experience, I think it's been, we've placed the idea of like being the 1% man and like being super rich and all these things, placed it on this pedestal where we think it's a lot more common than it actually is. Like there's very few men that are millionaires, that are successful, that have all these amazing families, but we kind of are trying to get to a place now where we just accept that there is a regular life that is just as fulfilling, if not more fulfilling, than being a millionaire. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, it's a struggle, as it is in life in general. As dark as that sounds.
Yeah.
But blood, sweat, and tears goes into careers and wanting to pursue what you want to do. For example, what we're doing as well, a lot of hard work goes into what we're doing to try and gain success.
Absolutely.
And that applies to everyone. In terms of trying to gain that 1%, trying to do that, you need to be a really special kind of person to be able to do that. You literally have to be a completely different person, and what you believe in, you may have to put on the back burner. You have to really sacrifice, and I think that's the big issue. People don't realize how much you have to sacrifice in order to gain something, and to gain this huge ground. I mean, 1%. 1% is ridiculous. It is ridiculously small, right? And not even a handful of people can get there. Right. And that's not to say don't try if you believe that that's, within you to do that. Right. But you have to be realistic, and you have to acknowledge the things that you sacrifice. You can't just start doing it and then halfway through you go, actually, it's not for me. Because then what all this time, what have you done? What have you achieved from doing that? And I think that's the big issue of it. You're either all in or you're all out. And I think that's why most of us are all out. And that's fine. As long as you're happy, really.
Exactly. That reminds me of the Elon Musk quote. Somebody was asking him, like, "Oh, what words of inspiration do you have for like future entrepreneurs and stuff?" And he says, well, if you need words of motivation, then you probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You
shouldn't be one. Absolutely.
It's exactly what you're saying. It's like you can't go halfway. If somebody has to tell you, "Hey, you have to work harder," you're not cut out for it.
You're not cut out for it. Absolutely. If someone's there to tell you, "Look, you need to start putting in more," you should already be doing that.
Right.
In the first place.
Right.
You don't need someone on the internet or a YouTube video to tell you what to do. You should be already there, gunning for it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think is happening with masculinity and manhood today. Especially, I don't know how old you are. I'm 32, but 27. Okay, so we're both technically millennials, but we grew up with this like idea of you're a snowflake, you're unique, everything that you say and do matters, your emotions matter. And we were just constantly validated. So then when we got into the real world and had to work, like I'll say this for myself. People always told me, "Angel, you're going to do something special. You're going to be great at something, blah, blah, blah," growing up. And I was like, and I would believe it. I'd be like, "Oh, cool." But then just never do anything to get there. So I'm like, oh, it's just supposed to happen. People are telling me it's going to happen. I guess it'll just happen. And then I wake up and I'm like, crap, I actually have to do work to actually get there. And I think a lot of what's happening in the West in particular is we're robbing men of the incentive to work hard and strive for something.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think we were sold a lie as millennials, to be honest. I think we were sold this idea that everything can be handed to you on a plate. And a lot of people believed that. This idea that, you know, you can sort of almost piggyback off your parents if you wanted to when things get tough, which, you know, people go through different struggles. If you know, if you need your parents, that's what they're there for. They're there to help and help you.
Yeah.
Sorry. So with that being said, though, sitting around and just waiting for something to happen it's not going to happen. I'm
Right.
sorry. And I know a lot of people, I'm sure people that watch your podcast as well, they want to strive to be someone, right? They want to be someone successful, and they want to do well for themselves or be happy within their lives. And that's absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, you're not going to do it by sitting around, are you? You know, you have to get up, out, and just face the music and do it.
Right.
You know, regardless of what hurdles keep throwing you, just jump over, keep doing it, you know? And unfortunately, millennials, I think, because we were born within the halfway point, I like to call it, where it's like we had technology and some of us hadn't. So we had it easy, but sometimes had it hard.
Yeah.
And now that's why I'm a bit frightful of this new generation coming up. And it's Gen Z at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they have everything, really, and it's a split now between they want conservatism, because a lot of Gen Zs want conservatism now, or the complete opposite. So it's literally opposites now.
Yeah.
So
I mean my little cousins are well, my one cousin's 18, full Gen Z to the max. He just turned 18 today, actually.
oh, brilliant.
But he was like red pilled watching Gavin McInnes at like 16 years old, you know? And he's just not about the leftism at all. Like, he does not care to be politically correct. And I think some of it is like rebellion towards adults, right? It's like whatever the last generation wanted, we rebel against that. Like us as millennials, we were rebelling against the Gen Xers, who were all about like, you know, put in the work, just work 9 to 5 and you'll be fine, you know, that kind of thing. We're like, we don't want to have to do, we want to like,
no, we want to be someone.
yeah.
Yeah.
We want to live.
And it feels
our
like we have
purpose.
been sold a lie.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely. But no, it's so interesting to look at Gen Z now and to see that split where some of them are just like, hey, you know what I'm going to do to be really rebellious? Get married and have kids. You know, that's what I'm going to do.
Which is controversial now. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
That's considered controversial.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think John Lydon from the infamous band the Sex Pistols said, I can't believe I'm living in an era now where the right are now cooler than the left and are anti-establishment. And it's such a true fact. I mean, we, back in the day, I think before we was born, when, you know, censorship was a problem against the left, and it was the conservatives censoring the left, now it's polar opposite. So you can see how things have changed. And I think the whole politically correct attitude now isn't sitting well with Gen Z. And I think they are starting. I mean, I've got TikTok, admittedly, and it is very addictive. And when you scroll through it, I mean, you see these most outrageous jokes that are being put through TikTok that I can't even describe on your podcast. I'd love to, but I can't, because they're so offensive. But at the same time, it's like, no, this is great. This is like punk nowadays. Yeah. Conservatives are cool now. Conservatives are the new rock and roll now. Right. Because they're rebelling against this thought police, this language police with pronouns and with you should speak like this. And you can't say this now. It's like, no, I can say what I want. Thank you very much.
Right. It's mind-boggling that that's a conservative principle now. The idea of free speech. That to me, like looking back, like at what the religious right was doing in the States in like the 70s or 60s or earlier when they were burning Beatles albums, you know, like all this stuff, and trying to censor people. Like I now look at that and I understand the motivation of like, we don't want our culture to degrade and become filthy. But their approach was wrong, right? And now I think like the right has found a new approach, but more so the left has just gone mad. Like they've just gone from Woodstock, you know, free love, to all the way to like, wait, there's no such thing as gender. There's no up and down. Everything is just whatever you want it to be. It's your truth. And it's just like, man,
that's just the failures of liberalism in general.
Yeah.
really, isn't it? And in my own personal view, I think the sexual revolution has been a disaster,
I agree.
an absolute disaster. And I think nowadays sort of proves the point that it was inevitably a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, we're turning our back on everything. We're turning our back on science. We're turning our back on tradition. We're turning our back on individualism, because now individualism means, oh yeah, you can be whoever you want. But now it's so polarized and so weaponized. It's like, no, I want to be this, I don't know, boxed person.
Right.
Identity politics checklist,
Right.
you know. You just want to be this person, and then it's like, no, if you don't agree with this, then you should either go to prison or be deplatformed and cancelled and things like that. And it's
fired
like,
from
go
your
and be
job.
weird over there. Like, just go and be weird.
Yeah.
Like, do your thing over there. Don't worry about my life. Don't worry that I disagree.
Right.
Like, you know, just do your thing over there. Like,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
I think you're
Get off my
spot
back.
on. You're spot on about the sexual revolution, man. Like I think the free love Woodstock movement of the '60s led us to, you know, I guess the cocaine '70s era, into the '80s.
Oh, yeah.
And all that, and eventually into the LGBT movement, and all of these things just keep expanding and expanding their definition of what quote unquote love is, right? Until we get to few years ago with the love is love idea, and now it's just everything's on the table. There's nothing that's not on the table, and we're just continuing down that slippery slope. But I 100% agree with you, man, and I do think that was a kind of a catalyst moment. You know, the '60s, the Woodstock era, everything happening, you know, just kind of simultaneously there. I think that changed the course of American politics for sure, and morality.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. So we're pulling on
yeah.
35 minutes, man. I want to give you some time to like plug yourself, talk about what you're doing, what the future holds for you, all that stuff. And then I want to talk a little bit more, but we'll do it web extended for my Patreon, because I'm trying that out now.
Sure. Yeah,
Cool.
no, that sounds great. Yeah, at the minute, I've just been doing a lot of YouTube stuff at the minute. I've been reacting to this culture crisis that we're having in the West, unfortunately, which is very scary, very black-pilled, very worrying. So I've been reacting to that every single week. I've got a page called Free Speech State, it's called, where he or she, I don't even know who they are, just send me this 10 things to react to, and I just organically react to it.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is pretty cool. So we struck up a little deal from doing that, which is really cool. So I do that every week. On top of that, I've managed to secure an interview with a guy from Project Veritas in the weekend.
Nice.
So I get to speak to the whistleblower who blew the whistle on censorship of conservatism. Censorship against conservatives.
Right.
There we go. Sorry, it's been a long day at work. So I've been doing that. Obviously, I write for Red Liberty Media now, along with yourself, which is really good fun. And we'll be working together a lot more, won't we? So that
we'll
be
be
cool.
doing some Red Liberty Media podcasts. Eventually, we'll team up, but I know you have one with Bean coming up. I think you're doing the first one, and then I'm doing the second.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be good. We're going to be talking about how abortion is not a constitutional right, which is going to be very, very interesting. So I've been doing a lot of homework.
On the Constitution. I love it, man. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to say goodbye here, and we're going to jump to the Patreon. But if you're not following Lewis, please do check him out on Instagram. Hilarious clips on Instagram. Just subscribe to his YouTube, so you do the same. And just let us know what you think. Drop a comment. Let us know if you disagree with anything, if you agree with things. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time.
Thank you.